I've seen failure more than once, the kind that makes most people curl up and quit, the kind that buries your name in the press, the kind that makes your so-called friends disappear faster than you can blink. And let me tell you something, talent doesn't save you when that happens. It vanishes, it gets scared, it shuts down. But work ethic, that's what pulls you out of the fire. That's what keeps you moving when everything's falling apart. And believe me, I've lived it. The early 1990s real estate market crash. Everything tanked, properties went underwater, deals dried up, debt piled high, and I was in deep. They don't talk about it now, but I was in billions of dollars in debt. Billions, and the media, they were loving it. Trump is finished, he's over-leveraged. The empire is collapsing, every day was another hit piece, another prediction that I wouldn't make it back. But while they were writing, I was working. I didn't hide, I didn't disappear, I woke up earlier, stayed later, met with every banker. Every lawyer, every partner, I showed up when most people would have checked out. I didn't care how bad it looked, I wasn't going to let them write my ending. And that's what work ethic does, it gives you a second wind when talent's already given up. It keeps you pushing when there's no praise. When there's no camera, when there's just fire, pressure, and doubt. I had to renegotiate deals that were choking me. I had to restructure loans that could have buried me. I had to convince the same people who wanted to walk away that I was still the best bet they had. And I did it, not because I was the most charming, not because I had some magic trick. I did it because I showed up every
single
day. I outlasted the chaos. I outworked the storm, and the people watching, they saw it. They knew I wasn't leaving, and that changes how people treat you. When they see you in the fire and you keep moving, you become unstoppable. Let me make something clear, talent looks great on paper, but it doesn't win wars. It doesn't win when the headlines are bad, when the market collapses, when the team falls apart. That's when work ethic takes over. That's when grit becomes your currency. And I had it in truckloads. I didn't just work hard. I worked obsessed. I worked like my name depended on it, because it did. And you need that. If you want to build something that lasts, if you want to bounce back from rock bottom, you need to bleed for it. I remember being in my office, floor plans spread out, phones ringing nonstop, people calling me crazy. And I didn't even flinch, because while they were talking, I was calculating. While they were doubting, I was dialing. I kept building, kept moving. I saw the opportunity in the wreckage, and I took it. 40 Wall Street, they thought it was done. I saw potential. I got it for a steal, turned it into a winner, and flipped the narrative. That's what work ethic does. It turns losses into leverage. Talent doesn't do that. Talent complains. Talent says, it's not fair. Work ethic says, let's fix it. Talent waits for things to get better. Work ethic makes them better. I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself. I had towers to protect, people to lead, a brand to save, and I did it, not through luck, not through charm, through hours, through grit, through tenacity that would have broken most people in half. That's why I never buy the "I'm not talented enough" excuse. It's garbage, it's a cop-out. What you really mean is you're not willing to go all in. You're not willing to work through the darkness, to push through fatigue, to show up when everything says you should stay down. That's the difference. That's why I came back stronger, because I never stopped swinging. I was buried under pressure, under headlines, under debt. And I didn't blink, because I knew as long as I kept showing up, the tide would turn. As long as I stayed active, the world would notice. The banks would trust again, and the media would shift, and they did. Slowly at first, then all at once. One win turned into 2, into 10. Suddenly the narrative flipped, Trump's back. And not just back, but it started with work, with discipline, with the kind of effort most people can't stomach. And they want comfort. I want conquest. That's the mindset. That's what gets you out of the pit. It's not some miracle. It's not motivation, it's not talent. It's hours, obsession, unbreakable standards. I built mine through crisis, through long nights and harder days. And that's why I never lose for long, because when it all falls apart, I keep building. I turned the losses into leverage. I took the bad press and made it work for me. I stayed loud, I stayed moving, and eventually I was undeniable. That's what work does. It makes you bulletproof. You don't just survive. You flip the entire narrative, you make them watch, you make them admit it, you were right, you were real, you were relentless. So when you hear about my story, don't you dare say it was luck. Don't say it was talent, say the truth. Say it was work ethic, say it was raw, obsessive, unforgiving effort, because that's what brought me back. That's what built the empire. And that's the blueprint if you want to build yours. It starts in the mind, everything, the deals, the comebacks, the wins, the empire. It all begins with how you think. And most people, they've already lost before they ever start. They talk big, but inside they're small. They say they want to win, but they move like losers because their mindset is soft, it's confused, it's weak. And I don't care how talented you are, if your mind isn't sharp, you'll break the second pressure shows up. I train my mind like a weapon from the beginning, not just to think positively. I don't do fairy tales. I trained it to think aggressively. Strategically, I taught myself to think like a boss even when I had nothing, when I had debt, when I had enemies. When the banks were circling, I didn't let my circumstances control my mind. I made my mind control the circumstances. And that's why I always come out on top, because I don't just play the game, I own the board. Most people think their thoughts are private, that they don't matter, that they're harmless. Wrong. Your thoughts are the architects of your reality. They build the walls, they draw the blueprints. You want a skyscraper life, but you're thinking like a tenant. It doesn't work. I've never thought like the average guy. Not for 1 second, even when I was starting out. Even when I was being mocked, I thought like a king. And because of that, I built like one. You've got to become obsessed with control. Not over other people, over your own state, over your attitude, over your reactions. When people threw dirt on my name, I didn't cry. I didn't beg, I tightened up. I got stronger because the battlefield is internal. And if you can't dominate your own head, you'll never dominate in the real world. Your mind has to become bulletproof. Steel, immovable. That's how you survive. That's how you thrive. That's how you lead. And you need to stop looking for approval. That's what the weak do. They want people to clap for them. They want validation. I don't care who claps. I'm not here for the crowd. I'm here for conquest. I don't need praise. I need results. If the results show up, the noise doesn't matter. That's the difference between the average and the elite. The average needs motivation. The elite runs on mission. You want to be great? You've got to get real comfortable being misunderstood, misjudged, mocked. You think the media treated me fairly when I ran for president? You think they gave me a fair shot when I was rebuilding in the 90s? Not even close. They came for blood, and I let them talk. I let them scream. And I built right through it because my mind was stronger than their words. My vision was louder than their noise. Let me tell you something, work ethic without the right mindset is like horsepower in the wrong direction. You'll burn fuel, but you'll never move forward. You've got to know where you're going. You've got to see the future before it exists. That's what I do every day. I don't wake up wondering. I wake up building. I don't question my ability. I reinforce it. My first thought in the morning is, let's win. Every single day. And you've got to get hungry, not motivated. Not inspired, hungry, like you've got something to prove. Because you do. If you're not rich, you should be hungry. If you're not free, you should be starving. If you're not building something that'll outlive you, then what are you even doing? I wake up every day with fire in my chest. Not because I have to, because I choose to. Because I'm not done. Because I'm not satisfied. And neither should you be. The difference between people who build empires and people who live in regret is one thing: mental stamina. Can you keep showing up when it's boring? Can you keep pushing when there's no applause? Can you stay sharp when the world wants you to break? That's mindset. That's what I built. That's what you need to build. You think I got to where I am because I knew everything? No, I got here because I didn't stop learning. I didn't stop adapting. I didn't stop moving. Most people want the shortcut. I wanted the foundation. I didn't want the quick win. I wanted the lasting throne. And I got it because my mind never slowed down. Not for success, not for critics, not for anyone. I remember walking through construction sites at midnight, studying blueprints, fixing mistakes, talking to workers. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. Because the empire lives in the details, and my mind was always locked in, always hungry, always looking for the next move. That's what work ethic looks like when it's powered by a bulletproof mind. You've got to raise your mental standards. Right now, you've got to stop letting weak thoughts live in your head rent-free. Kill the doubt, kill the fear, kill the hesitation. Replace it with vision, with confidence, with execution. Your brain is your battlefield, and if you win there, you win everywhere. So decide today, not next week, not after another podcast, not after your next meltdown. Today, decide you're done thinking like a victim, done thinking like a bystander, done thinking like someone who waits for life to happen. You're here to build, to conquer, to dominate. And that starts the second you lock in mentally. No one hands you the mindset. No one builds it for you. You do it. You dig it out of the dirt. You forge it through fire. You earn it through pain, through long nights, through silence. through pressure. That's the price. That's what it takes. So if you want to go from talented to legendary, build the mind first. Everything else? That follows. Let's be clear, mindset is the foundation, but execution is the empire. All the belief in the world means nothing if you don't move. If you don't act, if you don't execute with ruthless precision. I didn't become a billionaire because I hoped. I didn't sit in a room and visualize it into existence. I got up every morning and made it happen. While other guys were reading about success, I was living it. That's the difference. That's the blueprint. I didn't just outwork people randomly. I worked with intent. I worked with clarity. Every move had purpose. Every meeting had an outcome. Every handshake was a negotiation. That's how you get ahead. Not by doing more, by doing what matters. Talent chases shiny objects. Work ethic focuses. I stayed in my lane. I didn't jump from trend to trend. I built real estate, then I built a brand, then I used that brand to dominate across industries. One step at a time, no wasted energy, no distractions. When I built Trump Tower, that wasn't just a project, it was a statement. A strategic play. I picked Fifth Avenue for a reason. The location was power, the architecture was power, the gold, the marble, the name in huge letters, all of it by design. I wasn't just building a building, I was branding a lifestyle. And people bought into it, not because it was the cheapest, because it screamed dominance. That's strategy, that's execution. And I didn't hire that vision, I created it. You've got to think like a chess player, not a checkers player. You've got to think long, think deep. While everyone else is obsessed with today, you've got to be setting traps for 5 years from now. That's how I operated. When I signed licensing deals, I didn't care about the fast check. I cared about the equity, the leverage, the exposure. I turned my last name into a product, a premium product, and then scaled it globally. Hotels, ties, golf courses, vodka, all of it under one banner. The Trump brand, and the brand prints money because I built it with strategy, not shortcuts. Talent doesn't do that. Talent wants to be discovered. Work ethic builds distribution. It builds machines. I wasn't looking for fans, I was building platforms. Media, properties, political momentum. The Apprentice wasn't an ego trip, it was a masterclass in branding. Every year fired was a reinforcement. Every boardroom scene was training the world to associate me with leadership, pressure, decision-making. That's not entertainment, that's empire building. And guess what? I didn't do it alone. I built teams, I hired killers, I let go of dead weight fast. That's another lesson. Don't babysit weakness. If someone's not pulling their weight, cut them. If a deal's not delivering, renegotiate or walk. Time is your most valuable asset. I don't waste it. I don't hang on to comfort. I optimize. Relentlessly, I delegate with vision and I lead with fire. You want to scale? You've got to operationalize your energy. That means systems, processes, structure. Most people burn out because they're running in circles. I put structure around my work ethic. I made it scalable. I turned daily discipline into permanent momentum. That's how you dominate year after year, not just with effort, with architecture. And yes, I still outwork my team, not because I have to, because I want to. Because when the leader works, the culture works. That's how dynasties are built. When I lost, I learned. I didn't sulk, I studied. I looked at what went wrong, the numbers, positioning, the timing, and then I adjusted fast. Most people repeat their failures because they never stop to analyze them. I do, ruthlessly. I track data, I monitor markets. I study competitors, not to copy, to crush. I don't want to be like them, I want to leave them 10 steps behind. That's the power of strategic execution. You don't just react, you preempt. Here's something else, I always reinvest. That's how I compound wins. When I get momentum, I pour it back into the brand. More assets, more exposure, more infrastructure. I don't sit on wins, I scale them. Most people hit a goal and relax. I hit a goal and raise the bar. Because I don't want a good year, I want a legacy. That requires momentum. That requires obsession. That requires action day in, day out. When I stepped into politics, it wasn't a gamble. It was a calculated strike. I knew the timing. I knew the messaging. I knew exactly what people wanted but weren't hearing. And I delivered it like only I could. That wasn't a speech, that was a business move. A marketing play, a disruption campaign, and it worked because I didn't run as a politician. I ran as a builder, as a worker, as a boss. And I built a movement because I showed up with the same energy I used in business: fire, speed, pressure, results. That's how I operate across everything. One gear forward, one direction up. I don't entertain drama. I don't negotiate with laziness. I don't slow down. I move fast. I adjust faster and I execute hardest. You want to win? Move like that, don't get caught perfecting. Get caught progressing, don't get stuck planning. Get addicted to doing, that's the edge. That's how you outwork talent, by refusing to pause. Execution is lonely, you won't always get praise. You won't always get feedback, but if you're moving in the right direction, the results will come. I worked through nights with zero guarantees. I closed deals with no safety net. I made plays that looked crazy to outsiders, but made perfect sense to a mind built on vision. And that's why I keep winning, because I trust my work ethic more than I trust their opinions. The bottom line is this: talent may set the ceiling, but work ethic smashes through it. Work ethic is the great equalizer. The multiplier. You may not be the best, but you can be the most prepared, the most consistent, the most committed. That's what I was. That's what I am, and that's what made the difference. You want the life? Execute like it's life or death, because for me it always was. Here's something they never talk about: patience. Not passive patience, strategic patience. See, I didn't rush the big plays. I studied, I watched, I knew when to wait and when to pounce. That's what most people miss. They either move too slow out of fear or too fast out of desperation. I moved at the right time always. That's how I bought undervalued buildings. That's how I locked in massive licensing deals. That's how I took over headlines without paying a dime in ads. I didn't rush, I struck. There's a big difference between activity and achievement. A lot of people are busy, but they're not effective. They think just being tired means they're making progress. No, you have to be building something that lasts, that scales, that multiplies. Every time I work to win, not just to get by. That's how I created assets, not jobs. That's why I own buildings instead of renting space in someone else's. Every deal I did was a message, a move, a way to shift attention. When I developed Trump Tower, it wasn't just real estate. It was theater, it was branding, it was power. I built it so every single person walking down Fifth Avenue had to look at it and say, that guy is different. That guy builds bold. That guy plays big. I wanted it to reflect my DNA: aggressive, elite, untouchable. That's the difference between building and branding. I never just constructed buildings, I constructed stories, and I sold those stories to the world. I never moved for applause, I moved for positioning. The Apprentice wasn't just about entertainment. It was about reinforcement. It reinforced what I'd been building for years: the Trump standard. The gold, the grit, the dominance. Every episode was strategic. Every boardroom, every challenge, every firing, it was all branding. And that branding made me more money than most CEOs make in a lifetime, because it wasn't just a show, it was a strategy. People always ask, what's the key to your success? You know what it is? Relentlessness. Strategic, brutal, calculated relentlessness. I didn't stop when it got hard. I didn't retreat when it got ugly. I stayed on offense. Even when I was being attacked, I attacked back with results. You can't beat someone who keeps working, or who keeps moving, who doesn't flinch. That's the play, that's the edge. You want to beat talent? You do it by showing up longer than they do, harder than they do, smarter than they do. You keep swinging until they run out of steam. And most people are flash. They look good at the start, but they don't last. They don't finish. I always finish. That's what made the difference. That's why I kept building while others burned out. You want to scale your life, your business, your impact? Then think like I did, move like I did. Every asset I touched had to grow. Every partner I worked with had to deliver. Every second I spent had to convert. That's how I think. I don't work for the sake of working. I work for wins, measurable, massive, market dominating wins. And I always played the long game. That's another strategic edge. Most people are addicted to short-term wins. I wanted permanence, I wanted legacy. So I made plays that took time, deals that matured, moves that would pay off 10 years later. That's why I still win, because the seeds I planted a decade ago are still printing results today. That's strategy, that's power. But none of it works if you're not willing to outwork everybody, to sacrifice, to be misunderstood, to be hated, to be doubted. I accepted all of it. And I turned it into fuel. That's how you scale. That's how you dominate. You take the hits and you keep building, because the empire, it doesn't build itself. You build it with work, with action, with obsession, and that's how I did it.